Being recorded. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the North Sydney Local Planning Panel meeting. This is the second meeting we've had by video teleconferencing during the period of COVID-19, and we are endeavouring to meet all of the rules and expectations of transparency and participation through this process. And today for the agenda, we only have 3 items on the agenda. So it probably won't be a long meeting. The format will be that we'll hear from objectors. We don't have any objectors listed yet. And we'll hear from the applicants as well in terms of their responses to concerns of the officer's report or any of the objectors' concerns. I'd like to thank the North Sydney Council for facilitating this meeting in this way, and also I will invite the panel members to introduce themselves to the outside world. Now I'll just briefly say I'm Jan Morell. I've chaired this panel for some 5 or 6 years. I sit on a number of local planning panels and chair others, and sit on the Sydney East Planning Panel, and I've been a planner for some 45 years, and I'll ask now Sandra Robinson to introduce herself.
Hello, my name's Sandra Robinson. I'm a consultant town planner, and I also sit on a number of planning panels, and I've been on North Sydney's, I guess, for 2 years. Thank you.
Gary?
Yes, my name is Gary Fielding. I'm a town planning consultant. I've been for a number of years. I also sit on a number of local planning panels and currently chair the Western New South Wales Regional Panel.
And Virginia?
Good afternoon. My name's Virginia Waller. I'm been on the North Sydney Planning Panel since its inception. I'm an architect. I'm also the community representative for the area. Yes.
Thank you. And can I ask people to declare any conflict of interest or otherwise with items on the agenda?
Nothing.
No conflicts.
No, none from me.
Likewise, no conflicts for me. So we can now proceed with the first matter. I will just say that this is a live recording. No, sorry, it's not a live recording. It will be available on the council's website within 48 hours. And similarly, our determinations will be on the website at approximately the same time. So the first matter that we have on the agenda is 116 Military Road, Neutral Bay, and this is substantial alterations and additions to the existing Big Bear Shopping Centre and ancillary works. Also, it involves works to the adjoining Liquorland. I have 4 people, hopefully they're in the waiting room, to speak with us now. And can I invite the 4 of them to come on? Philip Rodriguez, Michael Rowe, Mark Curzon, and Paul De Cristo. They're on?
Yes, we are.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. I can see Michael, and I can see, unfortunately, I've got, let's continue here. I've got something. Right, okay, thanks. Right, okay, so we just have Michael, and yes, we have Philip.
Yes, we do.
And
Mark Curzon. Good afternoon.
Right, good afternoon. Well, we've had the opportunity of reading the council officer's report, as you have, and that has been on the website for the best part of a week. And we have all individually visited the site to understand its context, although it's probably a site that we are all aware of in any event, but nonetheless, we have done that. And I would like to invite, which order would you like to go in?
I think it would just be me speaking, Michael Rowe from Ethos Urban, and then the rest of the team's available for questions and
Right here. Thank you, Michael.
So good afternoon. As I said, it's Michael Rowe from Ethos Urban, the planner that's been working on the project. Thank you, members of the panel, for the opportunity to address you today. We're generally happy with the draft consent and the recommendation from council for approval. There are 2 aspects we would like to discuss with you today, and that's the deferred commencement, its conditions themselves, specifically the deferred commencement condition AA11 Just before I go any further, we did provide some plans that I believe, will have been shared with you. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Now,
Addendum.
is there a protocol around putting it? Do you just refer to them in front of you, or do I share the screen? Sorry, this is my first one of these where.
I think we need to share the screen if it's going publicly. So yes, you need to assume that the world needs to see it.
And is it me that shares the screen, or is it?
No, no.
We're doing it.
Oh, we're doing it here.
Okay,
These
good.
are the amended plans that you put in.
That's right. Yeah, not so much amended plans, but just more clarification talking points. Just I thought it'd be relevant background for helping with the discussion that we have today. I just wanted to clarify that. So before I'll speak to the more straightforward item of deferred commencement first, because it's the easier one. So the proponent would naturally like.
Let's first of all go to the page number in our bundle of the deferred commencement condition.
So this is talking more broadly to the use of deferred commencement for these conditions.
Yes, wait till we go to it still. Yep.
Page 55.
Thank you, Gary. Yep. Right, thank you. Yep.
So the proponent would naturally like an operable consent. The power to grant a deferred commencement exists for situations where the consent authority doesn't feel like consent should be operable until they're satisfied of certain matters. The deferred commencement conditions proposed clear design amendments that, in our opinion, don't require the consent authority to be satisfied of further matters. So if the panel does think there is a need to enforce these conditions, which I'll talk to in a minute, we'd ask that they could be just imposed as standard conditions that are design modifications to the approval, and so a move to the main body of the consent. So I just wanted to say that up front that we'd prefer that if that's possible, and if the panel's of the mind to actually impose them. The condition that we want to talk to in more detail is condition AA11. So this is the condition that requires the extension in front of the liquor land tenancy to be deleted and for the area to be reinstated as public seating and landscape planters consistent with the existing arrangement. It's a bit small on your screen, and you guys will be familiar with the site, but we're referring to that little bit of area there in front of the liquor land tenancy where there's it's a dark corner in there, but that's the area that we're talking about today. Now, one of the issues with the current centre is that its stepped form that follows military road frontage doesn't actually define the street edge. And this creates a series of relatively unappealing spaces, which is kind of evidenced in that photo, that's actually inconsistent with the character of the rest of the Neutral Bay Town Centre. So the urban design outcome we've proposed is to define the street, so it bringing the centre back out to the street edge. And that's reflected in Council's character statement for the Neutral Bay Town Centre, which states that buildings should be built to all street frontages at ground level. So that's a control in the DCP for the Neutral Bay Town Centre. We've tried to follow that control. And so the design amendment that's proposed here is directly in conflict with Council's own control and its own desired character that's set out in the DCP. And in our opinion, results in a poorer urban design outcome that this project was trying to rectify as part of the overall design. I think the next thing that we wanted to talk to you about is it's a questionable public benefit that's being delivered here. There's no question that public seating provides a public benefit. Section 2.71 public domain of Council's DCP, which is referred to in the officer's report, refers to seating being provided in public spaces that are not allocated to a specific use for people to hang out, take refuge and rest. Well, Military Road isn't a location where people would choose to sit and hang out. So in our case, people that are looking for a seat are probably there because they're catching a bus or they're not able-bodied. They're the people that need to rest, which is picked up in that control. And whilst we note importantly, because I think this is drawn out in that control, that Big Bear Shopping Centre is not public land, which is what that control refers to. The proposal provides for an increase in public domain seating of about 2.5 metres. So that's a 30% increase in the amount of seating that's currently available. But it's been located in what we believe is a more appropriate location. So you'll see in that plan proposed There's where the buses are sort of parked, and then there's an area of seating now that's located in front of that zone where the buses are. And the area in question we're talking about is about 15 metres to the right of your page where it says Liquorland Extension. So we're increasing the amount of seating. It's set back further from the main carriageways of Military Road. It's near the bus stops, which we think is the right place for it to go. And it's adjacent to the entry of the centre, which is that kind of ramp that sits, that's near where the seating is located. And so we think it reflects the optimum location. Sorry, Jen.
No, sorry, my internet was dropping out, but you're right. Sorry, keep going. Yep.
So we think it reflects the optimum location, the best location where people are likely to sit. And it's only 15 metres, there's expanded seating from the area in question. So it serves the public bus stops. It achieves the objectives of the DCP, providing a place for refuge and rest. And we think it ultimately will deliver a better outcome. The report also references the DEP comments, and it's been linked in with this design amendment. It's important to note that the comments that the DEP raised were in relation to pedestrian safety. So what you'll see is that image here at the bottom left again of that existing condition. And what the comments of the DEP, if you go to them and read, was about pedestrian safety and gathering of the number of people at that crossing. It wasn't to do with the provision of seating. If we could jump to the other slide plan that we submitted. Yep, thank you very much. So what you'll see on this slide is the existing condition as that first one. The second one was what we lodged, which had the extension of the Liquorland tenancy, which is about 91 square metres. That came out hard to the street edge following the DCP control. And the feedback we got from the panel was that we needed to bring that back so that there was more width to the street there near that intersection and where the pedestrian crossing was to improve the pedestrian safety in that zone. So what we did was we actually set back, and it's hard at this scale, but the property boundary sits out really where the awning comes out to in the revised one. So we reduced it from about 91 square metres, that extension, to 43 square metres. So there's quite a reduction that we already accommodated within our site to respond to the DP's comments that we thought were relevant in terms of pedestrian safety. But the design amendment that's been requested in this condition goes a further step, which is about reinstating the seating in that location, which we don't agree with.
I think we're back now, are we?
Jan, when did we lose you?
Chair, you're
Jan, are you
on mute.
Michael, you might just have to hold fire just for a moment.
That's right.
Until Jan rejoins us. Okay, here we go.
Right, thank you. Now, Michael, I got up to, with my notes, just past where you were talking about, it was not. So you reduced it down from 91 to 43.
That's right. So we did that in recognition of the DP's comments about pedestrian capacity on that corner near the intersection or the crossing. And so we responded to the DP's comments in relation to that particular issue. But what the council's recommended condition here goes a step further to reinstate the seating. And we think we already offer a public benefit, sorry for everyone else that's hearing this for a second time, in the form of providing the upgraded public domain on this frontage, increased higher amenity public seating that's increasing in size, and it ultimately services a Transport for New South Wales bus stop. And we're also increasing the width to improve the pedestrian capacity on the footpaths. So they're all public benefits we're delivering, and we don't there are no other private owners that have to provide public seating on the Military Road frontage and the rest of the Neutral Bay Town Centre. And we think in light of what we're providing, it's unreasonable to request us to use further private land for something that doesn't have a obvious public benefit. It's a lesser urban design outcome, and it undermines council's own controls in its DCP for the centre. And so we're requesting that the deferred commencement be deleted in its entirety, and that AA1 would go with it, and that AA1-2 gets relocated to the body of the consent as just a design modification.
Before we move on to AA2, and we do have some questions about that, but let's just go back to what condition AA11 proposes. I love the numbering of these conditions. Do you have some questions, Gary? Can I invite you first of all?
Yeah, thank you, Jan. My view on that triangular area, at the moment, it's not a very attractive area. I know it's certainly used occasionally, but it's, in an aesthetic sense, it's not a very attractive area along Military Road. I'm just curious, Michael, as to whether there certainly could be an extension allowed to Liquorland, but whether it should be that full 43 square metres I'm just questioning, whether there's still some scope to provide some seating, perhaps, just along the edge of that walkway, footpath, but still allow an extension to Liquorland. So that's one point. The other point I just wanted to raise, given what you've just put to us, is the width of the widened footpath, which includes some of your land. What is the total width of that as currently proposed, including your piece of land that you'll add to the footpath?
That's a good question. Mark, do you happen to know that number?
I don't off the top of my head. I'd have to scale that off to be precise with that, actually, gang. So we can certainly do that in the background and then come back to you in a couple of
because
minutes.
it does look wider than the footpath, for example, further to the east. And why I'm raising that is whether there's some scope even to provide some seating adjacent to the, say, two columns that are shown projecting out from the extension. Is that a possibility? It's probably more for the architect, Michael, than
and for the client, I guess, as well.
Sorry, I was just speaking to my colleague about measuring that dimension. Could you, unless Paul, you wanted to answer that question. Sorry, could you ask that again, please?
Yeah, what I'm wondering, well, firstly, I'm assuming the effective width of that footpath when widened is wider than the public footpath further to the east. It looks, it could even be, what?
It is wider.
A metre wider?
It is. It's actually a bit more than that. In fact, it may be useful if we could share, if you could kindly share that drawing, so we could all perhaps the first drawing, because you can use the ratio of the boundary line to the curb line as a point of reference as well, and you can sort of see that exponential. It's really a bottleneck that occurs there because there's obviously a change in the street direction, and so it does free that up and visually make it flow a little bit better. As well. So we saw that as very much a pedestrian movement area, especially with the traffic of pedestrians crossing the road and then turning left or right respectively. So the more you sort of compress that space with seating as well, it does start to compound that movement space. So that hence why we were very keen to create a very high quality space a little bit further to the west and therefore broaden that bottleneck. So we sort of saw potentially a conflict there. The perch spots that you refer to is a possibility, of course. It's just about the effective width with people moving at rush hours and things like that. So we felt that the solution we've got at the moment was a good balance of both of those, actually.
But if we could get that effective width of the widened footpath compared to the remainder of the public footpath, I'd just like to know whether we're talking about an extra metre width at that point.
Is it possible to share the screen so we can actually
Yes.
see the plan?
We are getting it up right now, Virginia.
Mark, if the extension was reduced from 43 to 23, say, is your client's preference to still have no seating? Is it about having that Liquorland as a clear facade rather than having seating in front of it, as well as the area?
Yeah, Paul de Christo here. Yes, from a client perspective, there's two constraints that we need to be aware of. First of all, the Liquorland tenancy is an existing tenancy and is defined by the light blue box on the plan. We can't alter that tenancy for some time, as there is a lease in place over that tenancy. So what we did following the DEP meeting was to locate and realign that facade as close as possible to that Liquorland tenancy to allow for the new facade to be constructed in front of the existing facade. That's the first point. The second point is, it is our strong preference to have no seating in that location, as we believe that the public amenity in the location that we've located the public seating, as articulated by Michael, is a far better outcome for everyone. And if we're looking to if the question or the challenge is to increase capacity of public seating beyond what has been proposed, our strong preference would be to do that in the location that we've nominated, which is further set back from the footpath or the street edge, and in a location that's more proximate to the bus stop and the entry to the shopping centre.
And Paul, just to add to that, the width that we're just referring to, I believe in the bottom corner of this, the bottom diagram, if you could zoom into that for us, you'll see that the pinch point has been widened by effectively 30% of the existing footpath. So it's a considerable increase. Yes, if you could just zoom in. I noticed that the annotated option's been taken off, so I can't draw, I'm afraid. But if you look on the right-hand side, sorry, where are you going? If you just zoom into the bottom image where it says Liquorland Extension, that would be great. Thank you. Yep, just that area.
Zoomer up there. Oh, there we go. Right. Now that bottom one.
Bottom
Yep.
one.
Yep. Is that right? Yep. Mm-hmm.
Or zoom in a bit further if you can. Better. Oh, sort of.
Just add a little.
Yeah, add a bit now. That's.
Thank you. Yep.
That's it. Yeah.
There we go. So just talk us through that bit, that again, in terms of the additional width. You said 30% greater width. Is everybody with us?
Yes, Mark, are you able to just take over control of the diagram to articulate that 30% increase in width?
Looks
like Mike might have dropped off. But Melissa, looks like you're sharing your screen. If we could move the pointer to where the 43 metre squared annotation is.
Yep, there. Yes.
That location, you can see there's a line that projects, which is the boundary line. So Mark's point was that the setback of the facade at that location would increase the footpath width by approximately 30%.
Yes.
And my earlier point was that the constraint there is the corner of the existing building and our inability to alter that corner by virtue of existing leasehold interests of Coles and Liquorland.
I think the other important point that you need to clarify with us, it's not just about that loss of floor space, it's about the requirement to provide some seating there as well. So your client not only doesn't want to lose the floor space, they don't want to provide seating in that location.
Well, yeah, but yes, we don't want to provide seating in that location because we think there's a far better location for the seating. We are proposing to provide more seating than exists currently, and there's a proposed 30% increase in seating, albeit 15 metres away.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Mark's in the waiting room. If someone can accept his invitation, please.
Just got back in. Apologies for the out. I'm back.
Back in? Yes. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah. I believe you probably carried on talking about that width of the boundary that you've zoomed in on there. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Lovely. Okay, I'll leave it then.
Jan, I think the thing to note, given what the applicants have said, the section of the effective width of the footpath immediately adjacent to the proposed extension to Liquorland is certainly wider than the remainder of the footpath along that section of Military Road. So it's what was a bit of a pinch point is really enhanced as a result of what's proposed in this case. So that's something we need to consider, I think, as well.
Can I
The
just
other
ask
point I'd like,
a practical question? If the panel agreed with this alternative seating arrangement that you've suggested, the drawing, the SK001, that's not in the consent drawings, is it? So
that is the consent drawing, Sandra.
So,
just to clarify, that drawing is an extract of DA 10213. So what you see there is in a proper standalone drawing.
So what I'm just trying to clarify, that alternative seating is already in one of your drawings.
That's correct.
Yeah, one of the lots.
And in the landscape drawings as well.
Okay, thank you.
The only other point I wish to raise in response to the issues that was raised by DEP was that one of the most significant inhibitors of pedestrians is actually the street tree, which is located immediately adjacent to the crossing. In our original proposal, we had proposed that particular tree be removed and replaced with a number of additional trees along the street frontage, but away from that corner in order to open up that throat and reduce that width further. But the landscaping team of council requested that tree remain in place.
Yeah.
Paul, did you also have the opportunity to mention about the existing structure of Liquorland on that corner?
Yes, yes, I did. Yes.
Lovely. Okay.
So just Liquorland extension, I mean, it's that tiny little triangular wedge between that and the additional 9 metres of coals. That's not going to give much value to the extension.
This is not a ploy to add area to those tenancies. It was more a street wall alignment that more appropriately responds to the urban design objectives of council.
I think that's quite an important point, because the sawtooth that's there at the moment, as you all appreciate, there's lots of hidey holes there. And when you sort of run through the septeds and about holding street walls with trying to mitigate lots of nooks and crannies, it is less desirable than holding a street wall in more sort of a formal manner. So tidying those components up has been quite important. At the moment, they're quite, dusty little pockets and.
Okay, well, it's not, and it's not very large, but nonetheless, it probably may not have the same social disbenefits, but the 9 square metres additional to Coles, that portion there would allow for some public seating.
But the public seating has been consolidated and broadened, in fact, by locating in that key area to the left. It might be worth just sharing the first slide if possible, because the net effect.
The seating's only about 5 metres from the Coles extension there.
But if you, we've got a proper big, generous public space. That's the gesture is very generous. It's well connected to the transport. It allows the footpath to operate in its fullest extent, and people waiting for queues outside buses, and then having a still space beyond that with a contained space with a proper, meaningful space, as opposed to lots of nooks and crannies. We feel as much a much stronger and simpler diagram to contain people, actually.
Yep. Okay.
So can I ask a question? What happens to the shaded blue area? Like we're looking at the slide now, the Coles extension 9 square metres, the Liquorland extension 43 square metres. How is that space realised? What is it? Is it just pavement or?
No, it's retail. It's retail. Should we say the retail slab will come to that. Where you can see the dark columns. I think you probably can see that there. So the dark blue, well, basically we've highlighted it to elevate, I suppose to illustrate the increase of that area, but it would become light blue as if it was one contiguous floor plate, and they would all become active edges. They will become shop fronts and windows, etc. So a proper street wall, a proper retail experience all the way through there.
Which is following the building boundary line, basically.
Apart from where we've widened it by that, on the bottleneck, yes, but we've pulled it back. But that's exactly right, yes.
Yeah.
And the awning as well, you'll see dotted on that drawing there as well, which is a series of boxes. Which also reinforces the rhythm, but they're contiguous. The element between, should we say, the two, we've kind of continued that portal idea, and then a frameless piece of glass between it. So we've got consistently weatherproofed awnings along that edge.
So it is existing at the current as it stands. It is like a hodgepodge sort of, and they aren't really pleasant pedestrian spaces. So your design, the design has tried to create a more improved pedestrian.
Yes, massively
precinct.
so. Yes, higher awnings, contiguous awning. There's no structure in the or planters in the footpath area or the perceived footpath area. So it's all being tied up to a contemporary, high quality retail facade edge, basically, maximising its activation and I guess its connectivity with the street. So yes, hopefully that will make quite a considerable difference to what's there at the moment.
So can we just go up to the triangle at the top of that slide that we currently have there at the moment? No, that's right. Thanks, Peter. Pull it down a bit. Yep. The 89.48.
You could actually pan down a little bit, and there's a like a landscape plan that may show a little bit more of that space to the left-hand side that's missing.
Okay.
It may be an advantage. Just down, but at the bottom of the page, bottom right, there's a landscape plan. Yes, just pan to the right, and I think you're there. You could zoom into that, and you sort of see the broader context.
Right, that area that I referred to, the triangle, that's now going to become retail space.
No.
Yes, Jane, that is part of the shopping centre, but it's internalised. Yes.
Right.
In fact, maybe that drawing's not as helpful as I thought it might be. Perhaps you're better off going back to the prior one. Apologies.
Yeah, that one. So, in fact, if there was any opportunity to provide for more of a little public domain area, it would be more in this space, I would have thought.
But that is public domain. That area is all being created as a zone of public domain.
Yeah, I understand that, but we've now taken out about 90 square metres. or something. I don't know what it is.
There's actually a drawing, Michael, I'm not sure if you have the reference number, which actually calculates the net increase of public domain that we've offered, actually.
Jen, sorry, that triangle, that 89, that's not an area.
That's an
Across
RL.
what level?
Yeah.
That's an RL.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
sorry.
I don't know how, it's not 89 obviously, but it's probably, I don't know, not 20, is it?
Well, if the other one's 9, yeah, it'd probably be 15, would it? 15 square meters?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what is that for, that triangle in blue?
That area is internalised. It's an internal tenancy relating to the retail mall.
Yeah.
I was just, I don't know whether the panel have it to hand, but do you have, should we say, a site plan or a ground plane from the DA submission?
Yes.
Because there is a net effect to this as well, how we've expanded all the public domain in other areas as well. And there is also a document which illustrates the square meters that you're referring to at the moment. That hatched area that you're seeing here as being that public domain that we're talking about at the moment is, if you compare it to the 27 square meters piece of retail, you'll start to see this is about 60 square meters of additional public domain space.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, just to give you a rough ballpark sort of number.
Okay. So you might just take us to the page where it speaks about the additional public domain.
Yes, Michael, are you able?
I don't have control.
Oh, okay. Is the panel able to? I'm just trying to think what the DA number, the drawing number is off the top of my head. Does the panel have the submitted documents in a folder that they're able to pull out?
I do have plans which I'll be able to share with the panel later, so if you can refer me to the plan.
Jen, on our agenda items, page 110 probably shows it best. That shows drawing number DA 102.
$110, yes, thanks, Gary. Yep.
Yeah.
Right, yep, I'm fine, see that.
Right, yeah.
Rightio, no, that's fine. Is there any other plan number that the applicant would like to take us to demonstrate their position about the why it's not necessary to have the 43 square metres?
Paul, would you have any preference? I think we've probably described it in quite a lot of detail as well as the big picture.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Jake. Are there any other questions people would like to ask on that aspect of it? Sandra?
No. That aspect, no.
No, okay. So let's now, why don't we move to the condition, the deferred commencement condition about the paint or the colours or something or other, and if we can understand the architect's rationale for what has been shown as opposed to what's now asked for. Thank you. Okay,
so we're referring to the terracotta, I believe, at the moment, and its relationship to the neighbouring and the context. At the moment, we've adopted a, should we say, a masonry and a contemporary solution without it being a slave to the brick that we sort of see in that precinct. And we obviously notice that there's a lot of lighter colour tones there as well, the more sandstone content, and then of course the brickwork content, which tends to be that quite strong reddy brown that's illustrated on the upper half of the oaks, which is immediately to the right hand side as we look at the illustration. Interestingly, the oaks is constantly morphing and has obviously slate tiles and it's brick at the top. It also has now a fully painted podium level, actually, which is white, which has changed probably 6 months ago. So we recognise that there's a change in context there, and without wanting to necessarily be a slave to adopting the oaks, red brick at the upper level, we felt that a lighter colour to differentiate itself whilst using a masonry product through material within a sandstone tone, which is very much of the local context and precinct, was a more desirable retail outcome. It was lighter, etc., and less dark. A lot of the shop front is actually windows, as you would appreciate, very high quality, low iron glass, so we get a lot of transparency. So it's very much a framing component to it. And we've adopted that approach of going for a lighter colour for those reasons in principle.
So your preference is, in terms of the overall language and integrity, is that you would prefer to have the cladding as proposed, as we see on page 52 of the report?
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions?
Could I just clarify, when you were talking about that colour, you talked about it as a better colour from a retail perspective.
Yes.
What about just from a streetscape perspective?
Oh, you're tough, Sandra.
Sorry, you shouldn't have said retail perspective.
Well, when I say retail perspective, it's a very different use to the oaks that's next to it. And we didn't want, we wanted the oaks to be standing alone. It's a heritage building and has a very strong sort of functionality and standing in its community on that corner. So we didn't want to look like we were an addition to it. We wanted that to maintain its freestanding quality. So hence we adopted the masonry, but we moved to a different colour. So we allowed both buildings to be different and add that variety to the street wall without it being sort of really a mirror of its colour. And therefore we felt that was a better balance for the heritage building or the Oaks building, and a better, different functions, different street wall standings, and more recognisably a mixture within the street wall.
Right.
So it was about really those types of movements.
So therefore, as an architect, you wouldn't be happy with the recommendation regarding the darker hue?
I think, you can play with the hues of the tones of the colours, but we were just, I think the big thing is we just didn't want it to be exactly the same as the Oaks, because we just felt that was a very specific typology that read strongly on that corner. So we maintained that differential. Really. I wouldn't say as an architect, I think it's one of those ones where you can go both ways. We just probably lent on the more allow the Oaks to be its own thing and allow this building to be its own thing, but have a masonry and a scale. You'll notice that we've adopted really key lines from the Oaks in terms of ridge lines and parapet lines, including awning heights. So we really tie ourselves into the street wall in every regard, just not from the exact colour match, I suppose. So there's many layers, there's probably 10 layers of reference and proportion that we've adopted, even down to that sort of modularisation of the facade. So it feels like a series of portals. And that scale was also important to us as well. We recognise that on the other side of the building and around the precinct, there's some very small cottages that are painted, rendered buildings or left as brick. And they have quite a small block pattern, as it were, or urban tissue. And so we brought that into the scheme as well. So we sort of took the DNA from the clues around us and allowed ourselves to be differentiated a little bit by adopting a slightly different colour, but everything else ties itself in quite elegantly.
So where's the cue for, like, the color? Is it it's not a sandstone color? It's just like an off, like a creamy.
Yeah, that's
color.
right. Yeah, so we were just looking at sandstone hues. There's a number of sandstone retaining walls and
the entry
buildings.
to the
Yeah.
So there's sandstone around the original entry to the Oaks, which is immediately adjacent.
It is
looking at the photo, the base of, like, the podium, I think Mark referred to, that is a lighter colour. So this could be reflective of that, but I guess it's different. You could go for masonry as, like, if you've got the low iron glass and it's transparent, the shop front, you could have, the other way is to go as a darker, more recessive colour. To frame the glass, but you've gone for a lighter colour.
We have.
To be clear, we weren't actually asking. We were just asking for that condition to be moved to the main body of the consent. We thought we could work with council on that.
Yeah.
I guess we just wanted to hear the architect's views on the colour and the thinking behind it and what led to the decision. The decision to clad it in that colour, which we have.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'd just like to check what the Design Excellence panel may have said about that as well. I'm not sure that
it was interesting. We did present it. We actually took the samples there as well. We spent quite a lot of time explaining the heritage scaling and rationale to materiality and proportionality, actually in our very first one and indeed our second one as well. So it has been part of that journey with them. I'm not suggesting what we've got is a final solution. I appreciate there's other views, and of course we're here to share that and work out that together. So.
Okay, rightio. We'll make some decisions on that later. Is there anything else that the applicant wishes to raise with the panel?
That is all. Thank you very much for everyone's time this afternoon.
We know it's all been through a very long process. You've been to the Design Excellence panel a couple of times, and there's been modifications through the process with council. So we will, if you've got nothing further to say, we'll adjourn this item, and we will make our decision available on the internet in approximately by the end of the week.
Thank you, Joan, and thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.
I'm sorry about the technology glitches a little bit. Okay.
Thank you.
Rightio. We may now move on to item number 2. And item number 2 is in respect of the building known as 80 Pacific Highway, North Sydney, and it's for recladding of the upper portions. I do not have anyone registered here to speak. Is there anyone else that may have come in later in the waiting room? No, we don't have anyone in the waiting room. Very well. So this is a matter that the panel will consider later after it has adjourned the public meeting, and our decision will be on the internet at the same time by the end of the week. The next matter that we have on the agenda is...
10 seconds.
Sorry? All right, okay, sorry about that. The next matter is item number 3, which is 73 Miller Street, North Sydney, and this is to modify a development consent in terms of construction hours. We received a significant number of submissions, objections to this. We don't have the applicant or any submitters here who wish to present to us at this time. No one in the waiting room? Very well. This is a matter that the panel will consider at a later time. The recommendation is for the extension of the construction hours for specific purposes till 10. The request was till midnight, and the report recommends 5 until 10 p.m. So the panel will consider this matter later, and our decision once again will be on the internet on Friday afternoon. That actually is all the items on the agenda today, and the panel will now adjourn from the public meeting. I'll close the public meeting, and the time is 2:51, and then we'll go straight back into session for the determination session. Thank you all, and thank you to the public.